How sweet is it to be a 49er fan today? 6-game win streak, 2 games ahead of the second place team in the division, the Seattle Seahawks, who they get to play on Thursday, mop the floor with, win the division, and look ahead to the playoffs. It is a great place to be, but we got to talk all about how they got here, how far we expect them to go, and ultimately, how long can they keep this winning streak going? Can they make it 10? Can they go undefeated for the rest of the season? Can they ultimately make it 14 and get to the Super Bowl? We're going to talk about it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And we may not be matching lumberjacks this week, but we are still friends. Suneil, what's up, my man? Happy to be here with you today.
Yo, man. Happy Tuesday. Love coming on the show, man. And it's been pretty nice being a 49er fan the last, over a month now at this point. So we're only talking about positive things at this point, so it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And we already have a super chat. Little sketch. I'm not gonna lie. This whole conversation around Brock Purdy's package and all, I feel a little uncomfortable with it. I'm not gonna lie. You won't hear me calling him BCB or anything like that. I just think he's a good player, but we don't have to talk about his genitals. Gray Fox, if you want to and you want to donate to do so, more power to you, brother, for sure. Yes, no hat tonight. I know it's very rare that I go no hat, but sometimes I decide to throw it in there just so people know that at 39 years old, I have a full head of hair. And it's important that you guys know that, because some of you are either my age or older and do not have that full head of hair, or you will be here one day and will not have a full head of hair. So make sure that you remember that I did at 39 years old. These things are important.
Is that shots fired?
I promise you.
Is that shots fired right now, bro?
You might choose to shave your head. I don't know. Are you?
No, man. I do choose the shit. I do choose it, but it's also because I don't have a full head of hair. So way to go. All right. We going at each other's throats now. All right. Hey, energy set. Let's go. There's no need for that. He just has no head.
Listen, we're not pulling
like,
any
I wanted
punches
to do my
tonight.
hair today. You could have just said, I just did my hair today. I thought I'd show it off. Nah, but you had to shout out, hey, anybody that's my age, hey, we're the same age, bro, that doesn't have a full head of hair. This is God. It's not me. It's not like I made choices in my life to go this way. This is just the way my genetics happen. So, all right, let's go.
I think what I'm trying to say is, for the younger crowd, you see that it can go both ways at our age. So there it is. All right, brother, let's get into it, man, because I got to say, Brock Purdy's playing some fantastic football, man. And you cannot go a show without talking about one Brock Purdy at this point. And it's completely fair. He's come in as a third string quarterback, absolutely impressed. But just how impressive is Brock Purdy to you? What are your thoughts on Brock Purdy and what you've seen so far?
Like, I think we talked a little bit about him last week, but this week he built upon, what we saw from last week. I mean, he's a lot more elusive than I expected, Jesse. I mean, there's this one play at the near the beginning of the second quarter where he was one-on-one with the defender, and he did that swim move and threw a dime to Debo on the sideline, and that showed a lot of poise. I mean, this guy can move. He's elusive. I feel like he has a nice feel of the pocket. He threw an interception that got called back due to a penalty, and then did the pump fake and threw a touchdown to Ayuk the next play. He has that it factor, and I mean, it's that thing that you can't really put your finger at. I wouldn't say he's great at anything, but he is good at a lot of things, and he knows how to win, and he knows how to galvanize the team. I personally haven't heard this team talk about a quarterback the way they talk about Brock Purdy. And I know we're going to be talking about that maybe in future topics or whatnot, but everything I've seen so far, man, I like. But it's only been a game and a half. So, I guess time will tell if it's just a streak or if it's like he's the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of comments about the hair. A lot of comments. Somebody said it looks like yours is going towards the back. The joke that I have, Rocky Mountain, and one of my friends said this to me, and I said, listen, your hair can't reseed if it never proceeded. And I've always had a hairline that's been back here. And maybe at 20 something, it doesn't look so hot, but at 40, amazing. So yes, it could be a little bit more towards the front, but we're taking it. We're taking it and we're living with it for sure.
Are we still on this? Like, what are we doing here, Jeff?
That is,
you don't have to respond.
I'm a man of the people.
All right.
Gray Fox says, I'm sorry, Jesse. He's the one that had the comment earlier. He says, I'm sorry, Jesse. I got a bit excited because I was at the game after 8 years of not going to Levi Stadium. Here's what I'll say. And Gray Fox, that's awesome, man. I hope you had a fantastic time. Say whatever you want. It's not like you're the only one that's saying these things. And in fact, a lot of people didn't see it, but George Kittle had a celebration that was pretty sketch. I'll just leave it at that. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But Brock Purdy right now is capturing imagination. Regardless of what your overall thoughts are and what his ceiling is and all these other things, none of that really matters because he's capturing the imagination of a lot of fans right now. And I think just how fun it is to be a fan right now is showing through. It's interesting, right? Because I think with Trey Lance, a lot of people think he's going to be a bust or thought he was going to be a bust, and obviously are going to still think those things. And so they weren't excited about Trey Lance because they wanted a different quarterback to be drafted, and they were frustrated when he was taken. And so it was hard for them to get behind Trey for whatever reason. Then you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who came in for Trey Lance, and a lot of us aren't the biggest fans of Jimmy because we pretty much know what we're getting from him, and we're not impressed of that playoff resume. And so you have a portion of the fan base that isn't excited to see Jimmy play. Everybody, I feel like everybody. And if you're not excited to see Brock Purdy play, then check your pulse because Brock Purdy is fun to watch. Great kid. As a dad, watching his dad break down in the stands was so magical to watch. I think anybody that's a dad understands exactly what his dad was feeling in that moment. To watch his son at 22 years old get a spot on an NFL team and then take advantage of it, that's a real emotion. And I just don't understand how anybody can't root for the kid. And I think regardless, it's funny because we're having these conversations and I'll ask your opinion on it because you have to have the conversation of the future and Lance and Jimmy and what are they going to do? But for right now in this moment, I don't know the last time that the 49er fan base had this much of a buzz and was so excited to see the next game and what's coming next because you don't know the answers to it. You don't know what it's going to look like. You just keep hoping that this ride continues. And as long as it does, man, it's really, really fun to watch. And I think even though we're kind of infighting over the future, for right now, I think we can all rally behind this kid, regardless of what your stance is on what the future looks like. And if we really just live in this moment, I think this is a moment that as 49er fans, we can just sit back and enjoy because they're playing with house money at this point. I don't care how good he's playing. When you are the last pick in the draft, you're Mr. Irrelevant, and you're the third string quarterback, it is house money for the 49ers. And right now, they are jacking all the money from the house. So I love everything right now that we're seeing with Brock Purdy. And hopefully you in the chat are enjoying it as much as I am because I'm having a lot of fun watching this kid play.
I'm just saying, you saying you were mad at the people. There was a lot of people bigging up bald people too, but you didn't pull up any of those posts. You didn't pull up any of those comments. I'm just saying, like, it really seems one-sided and it's kind of going one way. So I'm just saying the bald and the beautiful are beautiful too, man.
Oh man. Well, listen, he doesn't like my pompadour. He doesn't like my hair. He or she, I would assume he. But listen, I'm gonna wear it as high as I can and as high as I need to make sure that you know that I have it. Brock Purdy's in the chat. What's up, Brock? Good to good to see you, brother. I think you have a game to get ready for, but we'll take you. We'll take you in here. It's been, you know what? It's really funny because early on in this channel, there was a lot of people that would come in and change their names to quarterbacks, and there was some funny conversation. It's been a long time since I've seen that. So I think the fact that somebody is changing their YouTube name to Brock Purdy shows how much fun we should be having right now. Just going to throw that out there.
I think the biggest thing though with Brock Purdy is this wasn't what he looked like preseason, right? There was plays that you saw, okay, this guy had some talent, but and obviously like they gave Sudfeld $2 million guaranteed and still cut him because they believed in Brock Purdy and thought that he could be a viable backup option, or at that point he was like the third string option. I think people that are unheralded in this whole situation that aren't getting a lot of credit, Brian Griese, right? So obviously there has been some development with Brock Purdy. Jimmy G was having one of the better years that he's had. And, I think Kyle Shanahan, Brian Griese deserve some props here. One of the things that you've always mentioned, Jesse, is can they develop a quarterback? Can Kyle Shanahan develop a quarterback? Well, we're seeing a 7th round, the Mr. Irrelevant last pick of the draft, go out here and beat the 6th ranked defense in the league last year, and pretty soundly, you know what I mean? So that I think is kudos to Griese, kudos to Shanahan. Griese took a lot of heat. Shanahan took a lot of heat for bringing in Griese, never been a quarterback's coach, all that kind of stuff. You don't really get to see it. I guess he probably wasn't getting too much credit with Jimmy, even though Jimmy was playing the best football that we'd seen him play. But, at what point can we start saying, hey, maybe Griese knows what he's doing as a quarterback's coach too?
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to my guys with Between the Lines podcast. Awesome guys over there. In fact, if you remember the Behind Enemy Lines with the Carolina Panthers, then you'll remember Q, who is from Between the Lines podcast. So go give them some love as well. But yeah, I think, like I said, I just think Brock Purdy right now is capturing the imagination. And it's funny because after the 49ers beat the Dolphins, there was a lot of crap talk that led up to that game. And so we went to collect on those checks from the Dolphins fans. And I love it because they what they were hanging on to and the pearls they were clutching is that they had injured Jimmy Garoppolo and our season was done with the 3rd string quarterback coming in. Well, you fast forward a week and Brock Purdy looked better than Tua for a 2nd week in a row. They've now lost a 2nd game in a row. So I just want to say, whose season is done now, Miami Dolphin fans? Whose season is done now? All right.
The betting odds for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl are even that their chances are even higher now since Brock Purdy's been playing.
That's what I'm saying. So, oh man. All right. Well, again, we have to talk about it. We have to look ahead because that's the way it is, and people want to have the conversation. So, you personally, are you ready to crown Brock Purdy? And when I say crown him, I mean a few things. Let's look at this season first. Do you think they're going to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy? And then fast forward to next season, do you think he is going to ultimately be the starter when it comes to week 1 next year?
So win the Super Bowl this year. I mean, it's tough. I don't think that Brock Purdy is necessarily going to be the reason why they can't win a Super Bowl. I could put it that way. Just the same way like Jimmy. Like, I think that, at the end of the day, that this team winning a Super Bowl isn't about the level of play that the quarterback has, because I do think that, I mean, I don't know with Brock, but at least with Jimmy, I knew there was a ceiling as to how much he could do. So it's always going to be the others on this team outside of the quarterback, how good the other players on the offensive side can do, how big can the defense play. I still think, as long as Debo could come back and still be, the Debo that we know that he is. I think the addition of CMC, the emergence of Ayuk, and the way that this defense is playing, they absolutely can win a Super Bowl, even with Brock Purdy, because all the quarterback needs to do in this offense is not get in the way. Like, get the ball to these all pro level players and let them do what causes them to be all pros in this league, right? And so I do think that there's the capability, especially with the way the defense is. And I'll even take it a step further. The toughest team that they have to play in the Super Bowl, in my opinion, is the Philadelphia Eagles, which more than likely is going to be who they would have to face in the NFC Championship game. I think whoever wins out of the NFC Championship game ultimately wins the Super Bowl. So if they end up beating the Eagles, I think that the 49ers win the Super Bowl.
Listen, I don't know how much you've played Madden in your life, but there are games where they say you got to sit up. It's that type of game. I gotta sit up for this one. I had to sit up for that comment. Really, you think the NFC is going to be where the championship comes from? That's okay. I love it, because if it's the 49ers, then that's great. I'll take it. But damn, really,
Yeah.
why do you think the NFC is going to be the team that'll win?
What team? So last year, it basically was the same thing, right? The Rams ended up winning NFC 1, right? And I would say it would probably be between the 49ers and the Rams as far as which team was going to ultimately be it. For me, I think the 49ers and the Eagles are the most complete teams. Like, there's better quarterbacks in the AFC that are going to come out. But when you're talking about at all levels of the game, the Eagles, they have the best offensive line. They have some of the best position players, receivers, running back. They have a quarterback that's in the MVP talks right now. Amazing secondary, amazing defensive line. You could say the same for the 49ers. All pros at all levels. Defense is the number one defense in the league. No teams are bringing that from the AFC. What they have is one player, Kansas City. Why are you scared about Kansas City? Is it because of their receivers? No. Is it because of their defense? No. Is it because of their running backs? No. It's because of Patrick Mahomes. It's because of Kelsey, right? I know you're big on the Bills. The Bills don't look like the Bills that we thought the Bills were going to be, man. Allen isn't looking as unbeatable as he used to. That defense isn't looking as unbeatable as they used to. Who else obviously you got the Bengals there with Joe Burrows, but once again, they have, obviously a really dope offense. I'm not scared of that defense. So it's like all the other teams have like weaknesses that you could kind of poke at. The Eagles and the 49ers are the two teams that you really don't, right? And so to me, usually the most complete teams, the teams that are the hottest going into the playoffs, all that kind of stuff, are the teams that are gonna win. And I just think that the two most complete teams in the league are the Eagles and the 49ers.
Hey, I'm all for it. I think the 49ers and the Eagles have the same. Also, I don't want to call them limitations, because they may not end up being limitations, but same question marks. And I think that it's fair to question both of these. If Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts are down in a playoff football game and they are forced to throw from the pocket, drop back, no play action, you got to throw to win the game. Can either or both of those players do it in that scenario? I think that is why I have a hard time saying that the NFC would win, because I don't know the answer to that question. I don't. I'm not saying it's a no, but I can't say that it's a yes. I know that if Josh Allen has the ball and needs to go 60 yards in 30 seconds with no timeouts, he can do it. I know the same thing for Patrick Mahomes, and I believe that Burrow with those weapons could also potentially do it. I don't know if the answer is yes for Purdy or Hurts. And I think the team is very, very complete. But that's why I would hesitate to pick the NFC. I don't think they're outmatched by any means. I agree with you. I mean, top to bottom, roster to roster, does it get any better than the 49ers and Eagles? I don't think that it does. So I love the bold prediction. I think it is a bold prediction, because I don't know if we polled everybody, that's a fan, that it would go that way. I think most people would pick an AFC team to do it. But man, I love the confidence, and low key, you kind of gave me more confidence that it can happen as well, for sure. I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay. All right. Well, the original question was about Brock Purdy and, getting it done. And I think you made a case for why they could get it done this year. Based off of what you've seen in ultimately 2 games, are you ready to say, hey, it's, the Trey Lance project was fun, but let's turn the page to this kid.
I'm not ready to say it yet because it's only been a game and a half, Jesse, but I can say the setup for what Brock Purdy has, it's his job to lose at this point. If Brock Purdy rattles off a run, which he has all the capability of doing because there's no competition as far as who the starting quarterback is, Jimmy's not coming back, Trey's not coming back, and they go off and they do what we say, like a deep playoff run or even, win the Super Bowl, I think it's tough for Trey to earn that job back. Because at the end of the day, Trey hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities, not because he wasn't the man, because he's been injured. And Purdy has the opportunities and has run with it at that point. If he goes off and wins the Super Bowl decisively, at that point, it would be extremely hard to figure out a way to get Trey back in there because at that point, he's unproven. And at that point, Purdy is proven. So I don't know yet. Like, I'm a Trey guy. You're a Trey guy. Like, it really sucks as far as the guy for Trey because he can't do anything really not right at this point. But as a 49er fan, I want the best quarterback or the best option for us to win a Super Bowl. And if that's Purdy, I'm riding with him. And so it's his job to lose at this point. I guess at the end of the season, we'll be able to find out.
Yeah, for sure. Let's play it out, though. Let's go hypotheticals. Let's say that regardless of what happens, I don't know if they win the Super Bowl or whatever, but Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback, whether it's a QB competition or he wins it this year, whatever. Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback next year. What do you do with Trey Lance? Do you keep him or do you trade him?
Yeah, you always like the 49ers have always gone to their backup in every single season that we've seen under Shanahan. So yeah, you keep him. I mean, the only person that's looking on the outside in is Jimmy. There's no room for Jimmy on this roster next season, but this will be a Brock Purdy, Trey Lance quarterback room next season. We just don't know in what order, but I'm kind of excited about that.
Me too, man. It's going to be inexpensive. You got 2 guys that are 22 years old and developing together. And I think they're going to bring it, regardless of how it happens, I think they're going to bring out the best in each other because you've got the natural competition, but you also have 2 kids that are really, really smart beyond their years. And I think mentally they're going to challenge each other. And whoever is the starter is going to be better because of the other one. And I love that long term. I love that. So we'll see how it plays out. It'll definitely be interesting.
And that quarterback room both opens up the playbook for Kyle Shanahan, as we could see. Because we see that, Brock Purdy's already thrown more touchdowns past 20 yards than Jimmy has. And Brock Purdy's only been in a game and a half, right? So, and Trey, we know, has that ability as well. They're both mobile quarterbacks. So, I mean, they're, I guess, more similar for the playbook than, Jimmy and Trey were. So, it's going to be great. I mean, it's worked out better than expected.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Flav says, I would bet Seattle this week, regardless of QB. Just a very tough away game. I do agree that it's a tough away game. But if Purdy can get the W, then I will have no doubts this team is capable of winning the Super Bowl if they play well at the right time. I think division games are always tough. I think Seattle is always tough. I'm just not buying that this game is going to be all that close. My overall prediction is 7, but again, that could be a late score from Seattle that makes it that way. I just think 49ers are the superior team. They're playing better football. I think when you broke these rosters down going into the season, most of us expected either, anywhere from 11-6 to 13-4 for the 49ers. We all thought Seattle would be the last place team in the division. Kudos to them. They are not that. They've done a great job, but they're starting to kind of fall back to the pack in who we thought they were. And the 49ers are ascending into who we thought they were. I think the 49ers win this game pretty easily. That's my personal opinion. But, I've been wrong before.
And
Jamal
Jesse,
says,
I think
yeah.
I'm sorry, before just to go back to the Seattle game,
Yeah.
the reason for I think to kind of echo what you're saying is the strength of the 49ers offense and the weakness of the Seattle defense is the same, unfortunately, for Seattle.
Yeah.
They're terrible at stopping the run, and our strength is the run right now. So outside, Purdy doesn't necessarily have to have a great game, and the 49ers could dominate this game and win because McCaffrey is just Timothy. So
yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Jamal for tapping in as always too. Greatness 54 says, I think the best comp that we got is Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. I think we can win the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, but at the end of the season, it's Trey Lance's team. Thoughts? I think that's definitely a possibility. I don't know if there's a comp. This is the closest, by the way. I think if you're looking at a comp to a situation, this would certainly be the closest. I think the biggest difference is that Carson Wentz was on his way to an MVP type season. He was the favorite to win the MVP. We haven't seen a lot from Trey Lance. So there's that going for him. And I also think that Nick Foles, at that point, although he'd had, a good season here or there, was a little bit older. You kind of knew what Nick Foles was. I think, unfortunately for Philly, either choice would have been the wrong choice. I don't think they would have been great if they had kept Foles over Wentz, and we saw how it worked out with Wentz. I don't know if either of these choices for the 49ers long-term will be the right choice either, but being that they're both 22 and you can develop them and they can potentially have a competition, I think bodes very, very well. And no, I'm not ruling out anything. I'm really not ruling out anything. I think whenever you have a team spend that much on a player, regardless of what you want to think of that player and is he a bust and has he lived up to expectation, that tells you that team believes in said player. So maybe they look at it and say, great, we won a Super Bowl. We won it, similarly to how we would have won it with Jimmy. Ultimately, we chose to move on from Jimmy and go out and spend all this money to get a big arm quarterback who's mobile and smart and all these things. No, he hasn't reached that potential, but we want to see this thing through. That's entirely possible. We don't know what the franchise is thinking, so I'm not going to rule out any possibility at all. I just think if Brock Purdy plays well, at the very least, if he plays well, I'm not saying give him the job, but he does deserve to have a quarterback competition. I think that's totally fair. And so maybe Trey Lance comes out next year and he just hits a stride that Brock Purdy's not capable of because physically he's got limitations. That's a possibility. But at the very least, if Brock Purdy continues to play well, I think it would be unfair and unjust for them not to have a legitimate quarterback competition at the very least.
I think there is a comp.
Okay.
And it's happened under Kyle Shanahan, RG3 and Kirk Cousins. And the reason why I say that is, and this is what's going to be scary for Trey Lance fans, is RG3 had all the potential, played well, and all that kind of stuff. Injuries kind of derailed his career, and he ended up being just a solid backup in the league. Maybe never fulfilled his potential. Kirk Cousins was there, a lower draft pick, a guy that kind of was, Jimmy 2.0, or, all Kirk Cousins, all quarterbacks are Kirk Cousins, right?
And every quarterback, I love it. If anybody hasn't seen that, by the way, that the gifs or the tiers of quarterback, how all quarterbacks are varying degrees of Kirk Cousins, hilarious, by the way.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's great. But Kirk Cousins ended up having the long career and made all of the big contracts. And even though he's not necessarily considered like one of the top tier quarterbacks, you could do worse than Kirk Cousins is the quarterback of your team. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Trey Lance. 2 seasons, 2 injuries. And Brock Purdy's coming in and kind of taking advantage of the opportunity that's in front of him. One thing that we can say about Trey Lance, and this is unfortunate because I am a Trey Lance guy, he's never taken his opportunity. He's never taken the bull by the horns and gone out there and showed why he should be the starting quarterback of the 49ers. us as defenders of him are constantly talking about his potential, but we don't have necessarily like a stretch of game where we could just be like, look, this is what this team could look like under him. And, at the end of the day, it's going to be hard. The more Brock Purdy continues to win and play well, it's going to be hard to defend against it. So it's kind of that situation, I think, where it's like RG3 versus Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say just on how it played out. The one major difference is that the RG3 was forced upon the Shanahans, and they were making concessions that same year in that same draft to get guys that they wanted. They actually, Kyle liked, if I remember correctly, it was Kyle that liked Russell Wilson, and one of them liked Russell Wilson, one of them liked Kirk Cousins. They ended up getting Kirk Cousins, however that was. I don't remember if it was Mike or Kyle or whatever. But they made concessions in that same draft to replace potentially RG3, where in this one, he went all in and got the guy that he wanted. So he loves Trey Lance. That was a choice of his. And then a year later, in the final round, thinking, okay, we're not going to have Jimmy Garoppolo. I like this kid, Brock. We're going to need, a backup. Maybe he can be that guy. Maybe he can make the team, whatever. And so that's kind of how it played out. But ultimately, now that they're both on the roster politics aside, I think that is actually a very similar comp and good catch by you for sure. Zach rocking the Bosa puzzle picture that I made. That's awesome, Zach. Nice. He says, I've always been a believer that if the starting quarterback goes down, it's still their job. He may be on a short leash coming back, but it shouldn't be a question in my eyes. And again, we don't know how the 49ers view it. We don't know how Kyle Shanahan views it. Maybe that's how he views it. I don't know. It's impossible to say. We're all going to have opinions on what we think should happen. And maybe you think it should be a competition. Maybe you think Purdy should be given the job. Maybe you think Trey Lance should be given the job. None of that matters because Kyle may be thinking something completely different. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't disagree with you. I think, to be fair, though, more to what Suneil just said, which is, regardless of how it happened, and this is coming from, the biggest Trey Lance supporter that there may be, regardless of why it happened, injuries and what have you, Trey Lance hasn't had the opportunity to rip away the job. And in the 4 games that he's had or 3 games that he's had, it hasn't happened. And so, yes, he was the starter, but, Brock Purdy showing that maybe he could be a starting level quarterback. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. It's certainly an interesting conversation. It's not one that's going away. The offseason could get interesting unless Brock Purdy just wets the bed in a few of these games and really shows that he's a backup quarterback and makes it obvious. But I believe in Brock Purdy. I don't think Brock Purdy is going to do that. I think Brock Purdy is a good player. He's a guy, again, I've said it a million times, a guy that I've wanted on this team since 2020. I reiterated that on Grant's show before we drafted Trey Lance in 2021. And, he's a guy that I support, and I think he is a good player. Do I think he's ultimately going to be better than Trey Lance? No, I don't believe that. But I think he's a capable player, and I expect that he's going to continue to play well. That's just my personal opinion of Brock Purdy. So if that is the case, then we are certainly going to have a lot of conversations on our hands for sure. All right, let's talk about the team as a whole. Right now, they rank 6th in power rankings. And power rankings to me are always a lot of fun because, it's opinion. It's fully based off of opinion. And it's a little bit different than saying, okay, who's the best team? It's who's the best right now? Who's playing the hottest? Who has the hottest roster? If I'm projecting, who do I think is going to be better? And these things can change drastically week to week. I think a couple weeks ago, the Miami Dolphins would probably be much higher on this list than what they are now. But for right now, the San Francisco 49ers are 6th in the power rankings. Do you think that's the right spot for them? Where would you put the 49ers in the power rankings if you were making a league-wide power rankings right now, Suneil?
It depends, I guess, on what power rankings you're looking at, because I've seen the power rankings where Eagles were 1, 49ers were 2, and that's the one that I would go after. I just said it. I think they're the 2 best teams in the league. They're the 2 most complete teams in the league. I believe that, if that's the NFC championship game, the Super Bowl winner comes out of that game. So that's where I have them. I have the Eagles number one. I think they've proven that they're the best team in the league. You know, they have their health on their side, and they have stars at every single level of the game. And then I'd put the 49ers right there at number two with this defense and the position players. And obviously that could change if Debo doesn't come back to as healthy as he is. But if he comes back with the level of health and, you know, he seems pretty confident on social media that he'll be fine, I think they're second behind the Eagles.
Okay, that's fair. I'm not going to put them second, but I'm not going to put them sixth either. I think, to me, Eagles are number one. They've got one loss on the season, and we just talked about roster and how loaded they are. They deserve to be in that number one spot. So I'm going to put the Eagles number one and agree with you. I think number two right now, I would go Kansas City, just because regardless of why it happened, I know it was a different quarterback and, you know, the 49ers weren't necessarily fully healthy, whatever. We've seen the 49ers and Kansas City square off on the field, and it did not look pretty for the 49ers at all. So I would have to just fairly put them ahead of the 49ers right now. And then I think there are four teams that you can go with at number three. And I'm not going to argue any which direction that you want to go. I'm a homer, so I'm going to put the 49ers at three. But if you said the Bengals are three, or the Bills are three, or the Cowboys are three, I don't know if I would have an intelligent argument to say, absolutely, that is wrong. You cannot put that team there. I think you could go any direction. Like I said, I'm a homer, so I'm going to put the 49ers there. But I think Philly, we both agree, is certainly number one. To me, I do think the 49ers are more of a complete team than Kansas City. I agree with that. But until I can erase that out of my memory, and unfortunately, the 49ers, the last three times they've played Kansas City, it has been ugly. Really, all three times. I know the Super Bowl was close, but it got ugly late. It's hard for me to put the 49ers above them. And I know that players are different and those things, but dude, it's Patrick freaking Mahomes. So I'm going to go with Kansas City 2 and the 49ers 3.
I mean, we're going week to week. Kansas City did not look dominant this last week. They let Denver really hang in there. They let Russell Wilson actually look like he knew how to play football for half that game. And so for me, I think there's holes, and obviously they did win the head-to-head matchup, but that version that they played is not the version that's been on this win streak. And, you know, this offense put up 28 points. It's the first time this whole season that they put up 21 plus points in the first half. Jesse, I think if you have an offense that could do that, and like I said, obviously Vita Vea got injured, which is a big, you know, blow to that defensive line, but they were still getting pressure. Brock was handling it very well, and he was still able to make really good passes and do that. So I don't know if I would consider Kansas City defense better than Tampa's. And, you know, if we have an offense now that could put up points, which is what we've always wanted, right? To offense that could put up points coupled with this defense that is doing more than enough to keep people from scoring. You know, I just think it's a dangerous team right now. So I'm sticking with them at 2.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Just to play devil's advocate, because it wouldn't be fun if I didn't. So the Buccaneers were traveling east to west coast, short week. Vita Vea goes down early in that game. They were also without their starting 2 safeties, which I think that's a big deal. And so I think that plays into it. Also, Kansas City, for some reason, with our defense, had a really good one in 2019, a really good one this year. It's like they're immune to our defense. Like we don't have the kryptonite for Patrick Mahomes for whatever reason. The Bengals do, and maybe the 49ers will get lucky. Hell, there's a scenario, Suneil, where the 49ers could completely avoid the Eagles because the Eagles play the Cowboys most likely in round 2, and you get a division game. You never know how that's going to go. They could avoid the Eagles. They could have a path all the way through the playoffs where they're home field and then get to the Super Bowl and avoid Kansas City altogether because the Bengals or the Bills knock them off. And, then we'll see how things go. Things could get crazy, but that's a real possibility. Styles make matchups, and I just think the 49ers and Chiefs, for whatever reason, man, I hate that matchup. And the competitor in me and the get back in me agrees with Pern here. I don't know if deep down in my heart I really want that rematch. That's just being honest.
Well, here's one thing that I think is a big difference, because maybe the answer isn't on defense, right? It's Patrick Mahomes. He's one of the greatest. He'll go down as one of the greatest, possibly the greatest of all time, right? But this team, when Christian McCaffrey was able to actually have a full week of practice, hasn't lost.
Yeah.
And that is maybe the answer to how you beat Patrick Mahomes. Is we've never had a running game that could dictate the game against Patrick Mahomes. We had a good running game when we played him in 2019, but that running game wasn't necessarily time of possession. That was big play running, right? Raheem Mostert wasn't a bruiser. At that point, Coleman wasn't, it was more Raheem Mostert at that point. And you're not able to just give him the ball time after time after time. And there's a guy by Jordan Mason that's starting to get some run, starting to prove, get some experience, get some confidence under his belt. That duo can play the possession game. And you keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, still be able to score because Christian McCaffrey could take it to the house at any time. I don't know. It's a different team, man. CMC makes this team different. I mentioned it. Like, I know there was some detractors that are like, why do you do this? CMC doesn't necessarily change. You have good running backs. Nah, we had good running backs. This is the running back. CMC is that guy. And this team hasn't lost since he's been given the ball and been able to practice with the team. I don't think that's a fluke.
I'll go one further for you. First of all, they might get Elijah Mitchell back by then too. So that's another one that you can add in. But since he's been on this team, Kansas City game aside, because that was, 3 days and he's playing a little bit different. I don't think either 49er quarterback, regardless of who it is throwing an interception. I mean, think about that for a second. Jimmy Garoppolo had never gone 3 straight games without throwing an interception. The moment that he gets CMC, he goes 4 straight. Then Brock Purdy comes in and goes 2 straight as a 7th round pick. I mean, I'm not saying that both those guys aren't deserving of that, but I think just having that check down blanket and it's spanning across 2 quarterbacks that, I mean, let's be real. They probably are not, guys that can go long stretches without picks just based off of who they are necessarily. But for CMC to be on this team and it just happens to be that neither guy are throwing picks and really for the most part, outside of, maybe 1 or so for Garoppolo, 1, maybe 2 in a 4-game stretch. In the one last week where questionable call, probably could have been a pick and they could have let that stand. But outside of maybe 3 throws in a 6-game time span, haven't even been close to throwing an interception. I think having that check down blanket in CMC is a big reason for that. So listen, to back you up, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's a different team. And I mean, just like I said, man, we've seen this team without Debo. Like, Debo's injury is terrible, right? But imagine if CMC wasn't on this team, how we'd be feeling right now.
Oh,
why does this team still feel like this offense is still going to be all right? It's the capability of CMC. I think the emergence of Ayuk, Kittle's playing better. Jennings is playing better. Like, it's just a different team, man. So I think that obviously I agree. History shows that Kansas City is, has that, but I don't think I'm as afraid of Kansas City as you might be, just because I think this is a different animal that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Flav comes back in and says, I would bet Seattle mainly because I feel like the public betting on the Niners more, but the line hasn't moved. Usually not a great sign. Seems like a trap. I agree with that. I haven't checked the public betting on this one, Flav. I will probably after we get off because now I'm curious. But I brought this up going into the Miami game that 85% of the money was coming in on Miami to cover the 4-point spread. And I'm like, Vegas doesn't lose. Now, this is not me saying, oh, the league's rigged. I'm just saying Vegas doesn't lose. They usually know something that most people don't. So when you have heavy money coming in on one team to cover, I mean, listen, it's not I'm not saying the 49ers will lose, but that would make me a little bit leery of, are they going to cover whatever that point spread is? So totally understand where you're coming from. You said silent count for Purdy is going to be tough. Win would be very impressive. Yeah, I think everything that Purdy's doing is being impressive. And I don't want to take anything away from him by saying that I don't think he's going to truly be challenged until the playoffs. In fact, I think that's the opposite. That's me saying that I really believe in who Brock Purdy is as a player, even though he's a rookie 7th round pick, that I think he's good enough to not really feel challenged until the playoffs. So that's the way that I feel about it, just because I don't think these defenses are anything to write home about, So we'll see how it plays out for sure. I could see why you're coming to the conclusion that you would come to. All right. The 49ers right now are on a 6-game winning streak, Suneil, and if they close out the season winning out, they would end it on a 10-game win streak. In your opinion, do you think that's going to happen? We went through the second half of the schedule. I know that you had them losing to Miami. I had them losing to Tampa. They went through both of those games. Not only did they go through both those games, but they cut through it like a hot butter knife cutting through butter, let me tell you. So they aced those tests. They have the remaining schedule of Seattle, Washington, Vegas, and then the Cardinals. So do you foresee this team finishing the season on a 10-game win streak?
Shout out to Ted H. Truth Signaler on Twitter, because he retweeted a tweet that I had put out. This was October 31st. The tweet was, the 49ers have scored 27 or more points 3 times this season. 2 of 3 of those teams are in the bottom third of the league in points allowed. 7 out of 9 of the remaining games are against defenses in the bottom 10 in points allowed. We could be looking at another run in the second half of the season. I think the last 4 teams that they're playing fall into the bottom 10 points given up. So I would say it's more likely that this team ends up undefeated in these last 4 games. And go in on a 10-game winning streak. And I think a part of that is who they're playing. And a part of that is just, how they're playing as well. So, yeah, I thought they were going to go 8-1 in their last 9 games, because I thought maybe that Miami game would be a loss. But 9-0 isn't that far off from 8-1. I think you had them at 8-1 as well. So, yeah, I see them going through undefeated.
It's crazy, because if you really start to then forward think, so they finished the season on a 10-game win streak, then they have 4 more to win a Super Bowl. So anybody that's picking the 49ers to win a Super Bowl is saying that the 49ers are going to finish the season on a 14-game winning streak. Holy crap, that would be so impressive. So damn impressive after starting 3-4 to finish it on a 14-game winning streak. That's crazy. That would be a crazy. That would be, I don't know. Look, I haven't looked it up, but that's got to be one of the best runs in a season ever. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they were pretty close last season. You know what I mean? They had a little run there. I mean, it wasn't, obviously they had lost a couple, but they were like 8-2 in their last 10. And then they went, rattled off a couple. So, I mean, it's not something that I think is that far of a stretch of imagination, because at the end of the day, it's one game at a time. And, this is the strongest team that they've had. So under Kyle Shanahan. So, I mean, and not to mention, Jesse, the league there's no dominant teams really in the league. So it's not like, the competition is as good as maybe previous years as well. So maybe a 14-game winning streak this season is a little bit easier than maybe in previous seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, to me, the only way that they don't finish undefeated is if they just realize that they're not going to get the number 2 seed and they rest. And I think that's a possibility. I also think that there's some strategy here. So you talked about how they finished last season, and they did. They finished it on a bit of a run. They did have the Tennessee hiccup. Thanks, Jimmy Garoppolo, for that one. But they had the Tennessee hiccup. But outside of that, they really finished on a super strong streak to sneak into the playoffs, including beating the eventual Super Bowl champions on the road in overtime to make it happen. So that was all fine and dandy, but now it's a little bit different. And what came with that run towards the end of the season and putting in all that effort was some injuries. And this team has injuries going again. Deebo Samuel's out. Sounds like he might make it back before the end of the regular season. Certainly should be back before the first playoff game, it sounds like. But they're starting to pile up some of these injuries, and maybe some of these guys aren't the biggest names, but they're important to the 49ers' eventual success, I believe. So the question becomes, what is more important? Let's say you're heading into week 18 and you have an opportunity to get the number 2 seed. It's not guaranteed. You would need either the Vikings to lose to the Bears and for you to win, or you're tied and you just need to win in order to clinch it. Are you fighting tooth and nail to get that number 2 seed? Or are you going to say, hey, listen, you know what? We're going to treat this like a preseason game. We're going to play our starters for a quarter. We end up losing the game, no big deal. Rest to us is more important going into the playoffs. How would you play that situation?
I'll answer that. One, there's this streak that's going on. Knock on wood. I hope it's done. But the 49ers have lost a player these last 2 games for the season. Last game, it was Jimmy. This game, it was Dante Johnson. And obviously, we've lost E-Man for the season in a game. And it's all these knee injuries, my man. Like, something's going on. Like, I don't know. That is something that I just am like, what's going on with these MCL, ACL type injuries? Like, is there a way to like strengthen the knees, or why is it that 49ers have lost so many people to this injury? But anyways, I would say it depends. And the reason why I say it depends is because Brock Purdy is our quarterback. And what I mean by that is, do you want to risk the momentum dropping in that week 18 going in? Because this is going to be the biggest games that he's ever played. Right? All the playoff games. How much confidence does Kyle Shanahan have that he could give him a week off and he could come back and still have that momentum there? I don't know if I would risk it, to be honest. If the guy's playing hot, keep him hot. He's not a seasoned vet. Everything is kind of new to him, even though he's playing well. I think what do we say young quarterbacks need? Reps.
They need reps.
And so why would we want to take away reps from a young quarterback? Maybe if they rest some of the defensive guys, maybe that's a thing that would see. But I think you keep the offense out there. I think you keep Brock Purdy out there. And I think you just keep the streak going, man. Have them play as man. I think if the game was like it was last week or this week where they were up, I don't think you keep them into the fourth quarter like they did, or the third. I think like if they are blowing that week 18 game out, if it's the Raiders, they're blowing them out 28-0, 35-0. I think they pull them quicker, but I think you need to keep him out there, make sure that, he's seeing everything the right way, make sure that he's getting as much experience as possible, because at the end of the day, it's all about winning. And yeah, health is important, but also making sure that he understands everything, I think is just as important.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or another. I will say this. I don't care if the 49ers are the 2 or the 3 seed. First of all, I don't believe in Minnesota. So Minnesota might lose round 1 to whoever they play, and the 49ers would have a home game anyways because they're the 3rd seed. That's a possibility. Or worst case, they have to go to Minnesota. Minnesota doesn't scare me. I think they steamroll Minnesota. So to me, I don't care if that's a home game or not. I'll, just play devil's advocate. I'll pull the other side of things because I think health is going to be extremely important. I think I'm not going to say don't play them at all. I don't want to do that because I agree with you. The momentum with Purdy and all these other things, I want to see a quarter. Give them a quarter. Maybe they can get up 10 in that quarter and hold off and still, get the second seed because they're playing against a really banged up Cardinals team. Maybe that's a possibility. But if not, I'm okay and willing to take the loss if it means keeping our health. And not only just health as far as from an injury standpoint, like I'm not necessarily worried that they're going to lose somebody for the rest of the playoffs or anything like that. But when you don't have a bye week for as long as they have, and we just talked about the grind and finishing the season with 10 straight wins and then having to go into the playoffs and get 4 more, I don't care how good you are. It's hard to win 14 straight games, especially when 4 of those are in the playoffs. So rest your guys, give everybody essentially, as close to a bye week as you can give them, making sure that they're all at their peak performance physically and see what happens. So that's how I would play it. I doubt the 49ers do that. I think the 49ers will take the approach that you're saying. But if I was coaching them, I would probably go the opposite way just because to me, the mission is to win the Super Bowl, not get the number 2 seed. And I'm confident whether it's 2 or 3 seed that we're going to steamroll whoever it is in round 2. And I'm not too worried about it. So that's just me personally.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I would like to see Purdy playing in some scenarios where they have to come from behind. I just don't know if any of these teams are going to be able to do that against this defense. So you might be right.
Maybe you'd go the opposite approach. Maybe you just lose for 3 quarters and then throw in Purdy in the first team and see if they can.
Or just take out all the starters on defense, right? Yeah. Like keep them healthy and then put up the second string defense and the first string offense type of thing to put them in some game time scenarios.
That's so funny. Flav says, did you see what Aurelia said about Purdy's dad? Was a closer, didn't throw hard, but walked around like he threw 101. Love it. Loved Purdy fam confidence. Yeah, I think, and Brock Purdy definitely plays with that. I think, and that's where I've said some of the limitations, in my opinion, to Brock Purdy is he does have that swagger and that confidence, and that's a good thing for most of the time. But then there's that one time where it's like, bro, did you have to throw that ball then? Was that the time really? Like, couldn't you have just taken it and taken the sack or whatever? And I think that's what worries me a little bit. Certainly that shows up on film with Purdy, and we'll see. Maybe he's able to correct it now that he's in the league, but that would be a quick turnaround time to correct that overall. But I love the Purdy story. I love that the Purdy family is excited and was able to see their son play. Just the way that everything's played out to this point is really a storybook ending type of situation. I loved as a parent seeing his dad get emotional over watching him play. I think that was really cool to see. I understand where he's coming from as a dad, just being super proud of his son, and that emotion showed through. So I love everything that has to do with Purdy and his family at this current time. Cravatron says, nice flow, Jesse. You don't need those hats. Suneil looking fresh as well. Great coverage.
Appreciate you, Cravatron.
Here's the thing. Can we say this? I know that you were mad about the hair stab early in the show. Not everybody looks good with a shaved head. If I had to shave my head, it would look atrocious. So God knows that, and he gives certain people hair because they would be uber ugly without hair. Like, there would be no chance for me in this world if I didn't have hair. So you fortunately can overcome that. I cannot. So kudos to you.
I appreciate you trying to walk back the energy that you were doing before, because that wasn't what you were spitting out. You were spitting out, I'm 39 and I can do this, because not everybody can do this. It wasn't all. God treats all of us differently based off of our strengths and how beautifully shaped our heads are and stuff like that. Don't you start with certain energy and then end with this different energy, so people over here are being like, oh, Jesse's nice. Nah, Jesse's a hater. He dislikes bald people that are follically challenged. These are the things. These are the facts. Rewind the tape. See from the beginning. Bald is beautiful, baby. Thank you, Cravatron.
God, jeez. Just turned it into over. All right. I see where you're coming from. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. I tried to apologize, guys. I tried to apologize. Don't, listen, I can only do my part. Suneil doesn't want to accept the apology.
I don't need no fake apologies.
Goose says, which one you sit? Trey, Mitchell, or Kinlaw? Man,
Kinlaw.
this one's tough right now because under this scenario, you have to assume all three are fully healthy.
Kinlaw.
Because
he's gonna get injured.
I agree with you. The answer would have been Kinlaw for sure. But now that they've had some of these injuries at the defensive tackle position, I don't know if it's that cut and dry anymore. My gosh. Here's my
thought process.
Walk me through it.
So I think Mitchell for sure, right? Because obviously we know he's a immediate impact. We need the strength. We need that depth in the running back room because if CMC gets injured, you obviously want Mitchell there instead of Mason or TDP, right? So Mitchell for sure. Then it's Trey or Kinlaw, right? I get it, like especially with the defensive line being as important as it is, but same reason why I want Mitchell in there, I want Trey in there. If Brock Purdy gets injured, would I rather have Trey or would I rather have Josh Johnson?
Yeah,
right. So for me, I think that whomever is the other option, if let's say Armstead gets injured again or whatever, is much better than those other two positions that we have. So for me, I want Trey in there. I want Mitchell in there. Kinlaw, I can't even guarantee that he's going to be healthy. He'd come back, get injured in the next game, and then you lost another spot. So I'm going Trey and Mitchell, and I don't think it's even close.
Yeah, I guess my concern is for the AFC teams, like let's say they play Buffalo or Kansas City. I think having a deficiency at defensive tackle is not that big of a deal, but to get there, to beat Philly and or Dallas, you're going to have to be able to stop the running game. And if you're depleted at the defensive tackle, I mean, let's say Armstead goes down, then what the hell are you going to do?
I mean, are we sure Kinlaw actually plugs that hole anyways? Have we seen enough out of Kinlaw to be
first of all, pause.
Plugs that deficiency anyways? Like, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, is Kinlaw a player? Is Kinlaw just a body? I don't know. I haven't seen enough of them to be like, Kinlaw's the answer, right? So for me, I have seen enough out of the other two to know that they could come in and make an impact. So I don't know. I don't think it's even close, to be honest.
Okay, you swayed me. I'll agree with you. I think Trey's super important because you're right. Quarterback position is the most important, and I don't want any scenario where they have to go to Johnson. And I think Purdy will stay healthy, but you never know. I mean, he did get banged up already. I think Mitchell, obviously having that three-headed monster is super important to the offense as well. And just, all right. I agree, but man, I don't think it's as clear cut as you do. All right. Cravetron says, hit the like button. 232 watching, only 66 likes. It's free. Just hit the like button. Tinker says, shoot, you should see my teeth right now. Laugh out loud. I don't know. I don't know where you're going with that, but are you super old and you're losing your teeth? It's all right. Dentures are cool too, as long as they're a nice clean set. No big deal. Appreciate you, Tinker. All right, listen, here's the deal.
Jesse hating on Tartar now too. Jesse hating on Tartar right like we all know as part. We don't have perfect hair and perfect white teeth like Jesse. I'm for the people. Jesse's over here an elitist.
You know what? I'm not even going to give a plug to what's going on tomorrow. I'm just going to end it right there.